Dear friends, welcome to another episode. In this video, we'll analyze Donald Trump's alternatives for ending the war against Iran and why none of them are simple to implement. After 35 days of conflict, the Strait of Hormuz remains practically blocked, while the price of oil exceeds $100 per barrel. And on Wednesday, April 1st, Trump appeared on national television to tell Americans that the next 2 to 3 weeks will be marked by extremely intense attacks, with the goal, according to him, of taking Iran back to the Stone Age. At the same time, Donald Trump stated that diplomatic negotiations continue to advance and that military objectives are close to being achieved. The problem is that nobody, not allies, not analysts, nor, it seems, the administration itself, can define what this really means in practice. Because it's one thing to say that the war is nearing its end, it's quite another to explain how this conflict actually ends. To understand Donald Trump's dilemma, one must look at the strategic trap he himself helped to build. Operation Epic Fury was launched on February 28th with quite ambitious stated objectives: to destroy Iran's ballistic capability, neutralize its navy, disrupt support for proxy forces, and ensure that Tehran never acquires a nuclear weapon. From a strictly military perspective, the advances were significant, with several Iranian bases being eliminated. Leadership figures were also directly targeted, including Ali Khamenei himself, killed in the initial attacks of the conflict. The Iranian navy was severely weakened, and its missile infrastructure suffered significant damage. But this is where the problem arises. Victory on the battlefield is not the same as strategic victory. The Iranian regime, although severely weakened, did not collapse. There are no consistent signs of defections within the country's armed forces, and the leaders who took over after the casualties are described by Western authorities as equally hardline, or even more so than those who were eliminated. Iran still retains the ability to launch missiles and drones, in addition to preserving its most powerful asset, effective control of the Strait of Hormuz. As long as it manages to keep the passage closed, or selectively open only to partners like China, Russia, and India, Tehran maintains an extremely strong economic leverage over the United States and the rest of the world. The result is clear. There is American air superiority, but this does not in itself translate into the ability to impose a political outcome. And this is where the problem really begins to deepen. The first alternative to ending the war, and apparently the one Donald Trump has been pursuing, is to continue and intensify the bombings in the expectation that the accumulation of destruction will eventually force the regime to negotiate. Trump has already threatened to strike the entire Iranian power grid, destroy strategic bridges such as the B1 between Tehran and Karaj, recently brought down, and indicated that the oil infrastructure could also become a target. The problem with this strategy is that it assumes there is a limit to the suffering, beyond which the Iranian regime will eventually yield. Historical experience, however, shows that authoritarian regimes under bombardment rarely surrender. Most of the time, they simply take refuge in bunkers and resist. Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan withstood years of devastating bombing without surrendering. North Vietnam endured the Hole in Thunder campaign, and Saddam Hussein's Iraq resisted weeks of attacks in 1991, yielding only when the ground invasion occurred. Iran, for its part, has already made it clear that it will not accept negotiations on American terms while the bombings persist. Meanwhile, each week of bombing without diplomatic progress takes a heavy toll, both politically and economically. The price of gasoline in the United States has already exceeded $4 per gallon, and polls indicate that most Americans remain skeptical about the conflict. Donald Trump's second alternative to end the war involves escalating the stakes with a land component, with Karg Island being the most discussed target in this scenario. Karg is the core of Iran's oil export system, responsible for about 90% of its exports. Located just 25 kilometers off the Iranian coast in the center of the Persian Gulf, the island represents a strategic point. The logic behind its capture is straightforward and seemingly simple. The objective would be to take control of Iran's main economic artery and use it as a tool to force negotiations. Trump himself raised this possibility, stating that the United States could capture the island with relative ease, supported by forces suited to this type of operation: amphibious groups from the SS Tripoli and SS Boxer, F-35B fighter jets, helicopters, tilt rotors, Marines from the 31st and 11th MEUs, as well as paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne. However, experts adopt a much more cautious stance. They agree that taking the island is plausible, but warn that maintaining it will be the great challenge, since Iran still possesses offensive means capable of inflicting significant losses on the Marines stationed on the island. There is also a deeper strategic challenge. Even if the United States conquers Karg, Iran would continue to control the Strait of Hormuz, and nothing guarantees that the loss of the island would force Tehran to negotiate on the terms desired by Donald Trump. The third alternative, and perhaps the most likely in the short and medium term, would be simply to declare victory and end the air campaign, even without a formal agreement with Iran. Recent signs indicate that this may be exactly the direction he intends to take. In his speech on Wednesday, April 1st, Donald Trump stated that American objectives are close to being achieved and downplayed the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, suggesting that the United States does not depend on it and that its maintenance should be the responsibility of other countries. Regarding Iranian uranium, he also downplayed the risk, stating that it is buried so deep in the mountains that it is no longer a cause for concern. This approach would be the quickest and most politically convenient in the short term, allowing Trump to point to the massive destruction inflicted on Iran: destroyed bases, annihilated navy, eliminated leaders, degraded nuclear program, and declare that the mission was accomplished. But the challenges would be enormous. First, the Iranian regime would remain in power, severely weakened but not completely defeated, and intensely motivated to rebuild its capabilities and plan long-term retaliations. Second, the issue of enriched uranium would remain unresolved, as Iran still holds more than 450 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Third, the Strait of Hormuz would remain under Iranian influence with no guarantee of full reopening. And fourth, the American Gulf allies, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, would be in an extremely vulnerable situation. All of them suffered direct Iranian attacks during the war, had their energy and desalination infrastructure severely damaged, and would be left to deal alone with a resentful Iran still capable of projecting force in the region. Whatever Donald Trump's decision, two groups of countries will feel profound impacts: Israel and the Arab Gulf states. The idea that the Gulf region would be a permanently safe destination for investors and tourists has already been irreversibly shaken, with serious consequences for its economy. And if Trump ends the war without ensuring the long-term protection of these countries, the message conveyed will be extremely negative and lasting. The United States attacked Iran, suffered retaliation against its allies, and then withdrew. The reality is that Donald Trump has no truly simple or effective alternative to end the war quickly. Continuing the bombings without prospects of an agreement is proving costly and unsustainable. Escalating to a ground operation is highly risky and could have the opposite effect of the objectives. Declaring victory and withdrawing might bring immediate relief, but it would leave enormous problems for the allies and compromise the strategic future of the United States in the region. It is becoming increasingly clear that Operation Epic Fury is trapped in this delicate space between military conquest and strategic impasse. Similar to Vietnam, where the United States won every battle but still failed to achieve its strategic objectives, the situation in Iran shows that bombs can destroy targets, but they don't guarantee political results. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the bell to receive all updates.